Hi, I'm Bob Orr, and this is Washington Unplugged. President Obama and the Democrats' approval numbers are down just a bit, according to the latest CBS News New York Times poll, giving Republicans at least a bit of optimism. But only a quarter of the people polled still think Republicans have better ideas when it comes to the economy and health care, two huge domestic issues. So some questions. Where is the Republican Party? Who are the emerging leaders of the party? And how can the GOP make an impact in the health care debate to try to get some traction heading into next year's midterm elections? A lot to talk about today, and joining us to do that, Republican strategist Mark Mackowiac and also Stu Rothenberg from the Rothenberg Political Report. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming in. So Mark, Matt, let's just start with the big picture. Where is the party? I mean, the Republicans got hammered last fall. You have a popular president. You have a Democratic Congress. Are you getting any traction?
I think right now Republicans are getting traction. We've been a little bit sidetracked by some personal scandals that have been out there, and certainly by this nonsense birther movement that's been out there. I think that we've been sidetracked a little bit. But the bottom line is the midterm elections are going to be a referendum on Obama and the Democratic Congress. And I think that public opinion is trending in the direction of Republicans right now. If you look at the NPR poll that came out today, Republicans lead Democrats in a generic ballot for the midterm elections, 43 to 42. Usually Democrats lead that by much more than it shows right now. So I think that you're seeing Democrats overreach on climate change and on health care, and right now Republicans stand to gain. I think it's going to be an anti-incumbent year based on everything we know right now for the midterms.
So it may not be what the Republicans are doing as much as the Democrats maybe trying to do too much, too fast, overreaching. Stu, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't really see a lot of movement in terms of the Republican Party. There's some numbers suggesting that the Republicans are now seen as better able to handle the deficit and taxes, for example, traditional Republican issues that they lost last year. So they've come back there. But really, I think it's more of a case of the public having problems with the Democratic Party, with the president, with health care, with all the spending that's been going on. I think Republicans are benefiting. There are some numbers that show some slight generic advantages for the Republicans, or not advantages, but movement. The NPR I would take a little exception with because the March NPR had the number at 42-42, so I don't see much change there. But there are some other polls that show the Republicans creeping up a bit.
Let's talk about health care just for a minute, because that's the big issue on the table. If this deal is going to get done, the Democrats have the numbers to do it, but they have their own infighting. What role do the Republicans play in health care, and can they really have a legitimate voice there?
It's going to be interesting to see how it works in August. The president is going to have August pretty much entirely to himself. Members of Congress are going to go back to their districts, they're going to hold town hall meetings, and they're going to be inundated with complaints and questions and concerns from the American people. So it's going to be up to the White House to provide cover for those Democrats. I think there's a huge question mark right now about this, quote, deal that's been cut between the Blue Dogs and Chairman Waxman at Energy and Commerce. They were supposed to mark up the bill yesterday. He had to postpone it because liberals have said they're not going to support the bill in its current form based on this agreement. Republicans have ideas on health care. They're out there. But look, at the end of the day, they have a big majority in the House. They have 60 votes in the Senate. And Democrats are not working with Republicans to incorporate their ideas. So we're going to have a voice, but our voice is, I think, going to be more about the Democratic plan being bad than our ideas being good because our ideas are not being incorporated.
What's the motive for Republicans to do anything but stay on the sidelines? They could stay home, watch this thing implode, and then use it for political gain, or does that just paint them as a kind of a party of no?
Well, that is a danger, and certainly the Democrats have been making that argument for a few months now. I think pretty simply for some of them it's a matter of they were sent to Washington to do something, and everybody seems to agree that health care is an issue that needs to be addressed. In fact, if you looked at the Republican memo that was leaked or released within the last couple weeks, Alex Castellanos, Republican strategist, the RNC did some polling on this, and they concluded that there are things that the public really does want that Republicans can support. Portability of insurance, for example, making sure that people aren't precluded from getting insurance because of pre-existing conditions. So the Republicans as a party are buying into that, and they're arguing that they have an agenda. But on the other hand, you are also right. Part of the memo, Republican memo, was let's drag this thing out so it takes longer, the public chews over it, the public gets dissatisfied, and we can stop the worst parts of it. In fact, from a political point of view, what the Republicans want is what is exactly happening right now. Infighting on the Democratic side, the perception that the Democrats can't get their act together, and that's good for Republicans, frankly.
And the biggest thing for Republicans is this whole argument about costs. We just can't afford this. We can't go with higher taxes. We got to rein it in.
That's right, and I think Obama has really created this problem for himself. The perception that the stimulus was a massive failure, at least currently, I think has required Obama to make the health care plan
That might be unfair.
deficit neutral.
I mean, that might be unfair. The stimulus thing still hasn't really totally.
It still has time, but look, they made promises and they made projections that it was going to work more quickly than it has so far. And so I think that you look at those Blue Dogs, the reason that they stood their ground so firmly is that they took a huge hit to the deficit for the stimulus, and they're being criticized for that back home. And now, because Obama decided to make health care budget deficit neutral, you had to put a lot of tax increases and other things in there that are very controversial. And so that's why you're seeing such a huge argument between the conservative Blue Dog Democrats who are worried about being reelected in a tough economic year and liberal Democrats who want a full government takeover.
There was something else that is also happening. That is, there is a growing concern on the part of many Americans, particularly those with health insurance, that no matter what government does, the quality of their existing coverage is going to suffer. Now, the president has argued that's not the case. You can keep your own doctor. Your coverage will be as good. You get as good a care, if not better care. But the public seems doubtful of that. And increasingly, that is a problem. As you recall, that was a major problem going back to Clinton health care, when it was the government bureaucrats were going to decide what coverage you were going to get and whether you're going to have this x-ray or this surgery. And the public is very wary of that.
Now, healthcare is, of course, the big issue out there now. And some of this optimism is bubbling up, and the polls maybe look a little better, but the proof is at the ballot box and on Election Day. The first referendum, to use your word, would be in New Jersey and Virginia, right, Stu? What's happening there?
Well, actually, I don't see those as referenda on President Obama, although there's always some element to
They'll
that.
be painted that way. I'm sure that the Republicans will paint it that way.
Well, there has been a dramatic development, I think, in the New Jersey governor's race. We see a significant now shift in sentiment where pretty much everybody, and I will certainly go along with this, I just wrote something today in Roll Call, this looks like the Republicans' race to lose now. Governor John Corzine's numbers.
In New Jersey.
In New
think
Jersey.
About that. That's kind of a stunning.
Exactly. This is part of that Northeast that the Republicans have lost forever, we've been told. And we find that forever turned out to be a little shorter than we thought. And it's really because the governor's numbers are bad. There was obviously a major FBI sting recently where 44 people were arrested, including a number of Democratic office holders and I think a single Republican assemblyman, but a number of Democrats. That added to the sense that the state is just not working well. And when you look at the economy and the governor's numbers and how the governor picked his lieutenant governor was a real mess. He almost picked somebody who won a television reality show, The Apprentice, but turned to instead a 74-year-old state senator, apparently who was going to galvanize Democrats. The Republicans suddenly look in excellent position.
What about Virginia?
Yeah, I think, Virginia is going to be a great race. You have two very good candidates. Creed Deeds is a state senator. He's been around a long time. These two candidates have run against each other before. They ran for attorney general and had a very close race several years ago. I think you'd probably give, I'd be interested in Stu's thoughts, I think you'd probably give McDonnell a slight edge right now. The polls seem to give him a slight edge. He's the current attorney general. He's a very strong conservative, dynamic speaker. Republicans are very excited about these two races. Don't forget, to me, and I think this is going to be interesting to see whether this happens, but I think 2009 looks a lot like 1993 right now. In terms of the political environment. And the first thing Republicans needed to get Congress back with the contract with America was they had to have two political victories in these two states. And governors, and they did that in New Jersey and Virginia in 1993, and I think they may do it again.
Who's going to be the voice, though? I mean, the Republicans have had some pretty high-profile meltdowns lately. Governor Sanford comes to mind. John Ensign comes to mind. Who's going to be the emerging voice?
I don't think there will be a voice, and I think it's unfair for us to demand a voice, though I understand why those of us in the media always want a voice. We want to know, okay, where is the party? And so give us one person who can tell us. But the reality is when a party is out of power everywhere, there are lots of voices, and there's no one authoritative voice. I think the Republicans are going to have to suffer through this for a while. It's not ideal, but nobody can ever compete with a president, particularly one this articulate and personable.
Governor Pawlenty makes a big speech today to the Republican National Committee, and he's going to hammer the president, we're told, on health care. Is Governor Pawlenty, is he a potential voice?
He has a lot to offer. Tim Pawlenty is a blue-collar individual. He's won twice as governor in a very blue state. He's had a very successful record. He closed the budget gap without raising taxes this last year. And additionally, he's announced he's not running for re-election, so he's going to focus, I think, on running for president once his term of service is over. In terms of the leadership for the future, there's a lot of interesting, dynamic Republicans that are not quite on the national level yet. Congressmen like Paul Ryan, Mike Pence from Indiana is the #3 Republican in leadership. He's a great voice for the party. But I agree with Stu. I mean, there is no national leader right now, and there was no national leader for the Democrats in 2005. It wasn't Howard Dean, it wasn't John Kerry, it wasn't Hillary Clinton. This is the way it is when you're the out party, and we're going to settle this in 2011, 2012 when we select our nominee.
And I have to ask you about Sarah Palin, the most recent ex-governor of Alaska.
Do you have to, really?
Well,
is it a requirement?
So. Is she a player at all going forward? What's happening there?
Yeah, she's a player because she's a celebrity and a personality, and the national media like to cover her and ask questions about her. And she has a certain charisma and support within the party. I think she's got a long way to go. The poll numbers suggest she has a long way to go to broaden support. Is there a core within the National Republican Party, the conservative element of the party, that really likes her and really likes the fact that she sticks it to the media? And yes, you know, and so she is a voice. But in terms of 2012 and the leadership of the party over the long haul, I think there are a number of other voices that will compete for attention and that will get as much or more than now the former governor of Alaska.
We've got to wrap this up, but just one quick prediction, 14, 15 months out. 2010 midterms, Republicans gain?
Oh, no doubt. I think it'd be almost impossible to say they wouldn't gain. I suspect it's around 20 seats, probably not enough to get the majority back, but it's unclear how big of a year it's going to be.
And how big of a player is health care in that? I mean, as this thing kind of plays out, what do you think, Stu?
Well, I think it will be a significant factor in boosting Republican morale and the Republican message about taxes and government spending and deficits. I tend to think that the Republicans will gain seats in the House somewhere from the mid-single digits to the mid-teens, depending upon whether it's a mediocre year or a pretty good year. But the Senate still is a dogfight. Republican prospects have approved in the last few weeks with candidates entering the race, and in one case Jim Bunning exiting. But the Senate still looks like a fight, and it's possible the Democrats could gain seats in the Senate while the Republicans could gain a dozen seats in the House. So there's still a long way to go.
All right, Stu Rothenberg, Matt Mackowiac, thanks very much for joining us today. And now to the politics of beer and how the president's remark at a news conference has set the stage for tonight's picnic table summit on race relations at the White House. Our man Fernando Suarez jumped on the case. Take a look.
It was an arrest that captivated the country, even drawing a reaction from the President of the United States as he sold his health care plan to the nation.
Good evening. Please be seated. The Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home.
So move over Healthcare Summit. Here comes the Beer Summit. President Obama today is hosting a happy hour for Cambridge Sergeant James Crowley and Harvard professor Henry Louis Gate, hoping to cool racial tensions brewing over their dispute.
I think this will be a very casual affair. There's no formal agenda other than cold beer.
Choosing which suds to suck down might be a simple decision for most people, but if you're the president, it's all politics. According to the White House, how can you go wrong with a Bud Light, right?
The White House is bending over backwards to make the president and the two participants appear to be blue-collar and regular Americans. That being said, this is not a regular get-together. Most people don't select their beer for a happy hour 3 days ahead of time.
But happy hour goers from across the country disagree.
You know, the guy just wants to sit down and have a beer with them. What's the big deal? So he just wants to hang out and talk politics.
So isn't that how guys settle issues? 3 guys over beer, yeah. I guess they're going to come out best friends.
As for Bud Light's parent company, Belgian-owned Anheuser-Busch, they tell CBS News they're more than happy to have the president sipping on any of their lagers. In a statement, they wrote, "Enjoying a beer is a great way to bring people together. We would be proud if Bud Light or any of our beers are chosen for the White House meeting." If kicking back and having a few beers is all it takes to mend a bad relationship, then maybe the only issue of color that might come up will be in the beers that they're drinking. Fernando Suarez, CBS News, Washington. Hey, John, can you beer me?
And more on the great beer summit tonight on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric, and again tomorrow morning on The Early Show. And that is Washington Unplugged for now. Thanks for watching as always. And you can find us right here at cbsnews.com every day at 12:30. I'm Bob Orr.